sees the memes of production, and the like and subscribe button. Napoleon kind of fucked it all up. He really did. He really did. It's unironically like really bad luck on that one, because Napoleon actually was goated. Like, he actually did have the sauce. Like, terrible guy. But there's no, like, he was like one of the great men. You know what I mean? Like, it could have been anyway. If it was some other guy instead of him, they would have just gotten killed. And then all of history would have been different. But it had to be Napoleon. It had to be the guy. You're saying he was the Mamdani of his time? You know, the aristocrats of like 18th century Europe flop sweating as they see the primary results. Napoleon getting by like 9 points ahead at the end of the first round. Oh! Maybe if we tell the public he hates Jews. Did Napoleon hate? Probably. He was a European 200-something years ago. He was relatively kind to Jews. I guess he is like Mamdani. I think being anti-Zionist is the most pro-Jewish you can get. Mamdani was supported, like, overwhelmingly by Jewish advocacy groups. Relatively? Relatively. Yeah, it's Napoleon. It's 200 years ago, okay? Did he condemn Hamas? Did he get a chance to? He didn't really come into contact with any Muslims, did he? Well, I mean, obviously Muslim, but I mean, like, not Muslim civilizations. He wouldn't... Wait, how far west did he... Not west. How far east did he get? He invaded Egypt! It was even in the movie! I'm stupid! I'm sorry, I completely forgot. I forget! So when I think of Napoleon, I think, like, France, Germany, Austro-Hungarian... Like, I don't think... Hold on. Extent of Napoleon's conquests. No one saw that movie? Yeah, it was in the trailer. All this and Egypt? No, wait. Europe and French Empire, states dependent on Napoleon, France and its allies before Napoleon's Russian campaign. Did he have to do Russia and Egypt? Couldn't he have just stopped? Was he stupid? What the f is it with, like, people like this? Why can't they be like, oh, we control basically the entire modern world? Like, well, I guess to be... This is a lesson in self-confidence. Okay, this is unironically, this is a lesson in self-confidence. You think like, oh, well, how do people, in order to be the guy who thinks we should invade Russia, you have to, sorry, I mixed it up. In order to be the guy who conquers all of Europe, you have to be the guy who would also then say, let's try Russia too. You have to be built different. There's no such thing as a guy who has the sauce to take Europe and then goes, nah, I'm full. Me with a suspiciously Western Europe shaped bulge in my tummy. Delicious. I couldn't eat another bite. That guy doesn't exist. That guy always has room for more. Learn this lesson in your day-to-day. Vaush going great man of history arc. What, wasn't Napoleon actually like one of the great men? Like part of historical materialism is understanding that sometimes a guy's got a lot of material in his nads, you know? Like, sometimes you just have to go, okay, so historical forces, French Revolution, and then there was this guy. If it was any other guy, things would have turned out different, but this guy did, in fact, do a lot of stuff very specific to him. When we get a great man ranking, Alexander's got to be up there. Of course Alexander's up there. He's like the guy. I'm not even a big history buff. Everyone knows that if you're going to give great man theory any real credit, like Napoleon, Alexander, Genghis Khan, yeah, there are some guys who are just up there, you know? Hannibal, yeah, give it to Hannibal. Iskandar, yeah. Washington? I don't know. No, I don't really think so. None of the all of the American founding fathers kind of feel like an extension of the colonial aristocracy, post-enlightenment grievance with the crown. Like, none of them, they didn't take the existing like thread of history and go yoink. You know what I mean? Because Napoleon kind of did a little bit. Alexander and Genghis Khan certainly did. Hannibal, you know, Washington's influence on how the presidency worked, that's not even remotely comparable. That was just Washington going, delicious, with two suspiciously 2 4-year presidential term shaped bulges in his tummy. I'm done. Like, that wasn't really Hitler? Hitler was absolute 100% no. Hitler was the most, like, ride the wave motherfucker. Hitler literally copied Mussolini's book and just, like, yelled and yelled and yelled until he got like he was Hitler was Hitler was an NPC. Real history fans will understand this. Very little genuine, like, independent thinking, very little autonomy against the flow of history. He saw he saw what Mussolini identified, which was that if you appeal predominantly to people's grievances, you play up the populist bit, you appeal to the wounded sensibilities of veterans who feel like they've been betrayed, people they feel like their lives have been stolen, whatever, then and you need scapegoats, and if you have the scapegoats, like, you can get away with anything. It was very derivative. It was way more like Mussolini was more of a great man than Hitler, and I don't think Mussolini qualifies either, frankly. Hitler was a copycat who just had a better industrial base to build off of. Also, he took the idea farther. Ben Franklin was 100% a great man. I think Ben Franklin would better qualify than Washington, probably. Obama, that's right. That's right. If Hitler doesn't exist, World War II never happens. Buddy, you couldn't have, you optimized that point to be incorrect. World War II was like destined to happen whether or not Hitler was born. That shit was the most inevitable crash course possible. World War I guaranteed World War II, okay? All that, the last war, Great War bullshit, that was massive cope from the leadership at the time. And World War I started because one guy got shot. No. You're not getting it. Not really. World War I was going to happen anyway. This is the thing, right? The Archduke Franz Ferdinand's assassination, this is the great man thing, okay? People want to make all these big historical events down to like a guy or like a thing happening. In reality, it's this big powder keg of all these pre-existing biases and associations and built up historical tension that eventually like an event manifests it, but it could have been any other event. Anything could have set off World War I. It could have been the assassination of an official. It could have been like a trade dispute. It could have been like a rogue general moving troops into the borders of another nation and like the empire from which he came claiming the territory. Anything could have happened, you know? The point is, like, for people like Alexander the Great or Napoleon, they took the existing tension, the existing framework, and they wrenched it in a different direction. They, by force of will and by being usually very competent military leaders, were able to take the because Napoleon was not guaranteed to happen. If Napoleon had not been born, the French Empire wouldn't have happened. That's the thing. Like, it did happen, like, in a different way, but this version of the French Empire would not have happened. Competent? I said Alexander the Great and Napoleon. Yeah, do you dispute that they were competent military leaders? Is that like is that a hot take? Do historians dispute that one? My understanding was that it was pretty well agreed upon. The revolution would have happened, but it would have, yeah, but that's a different thing. I'm talking about this. Like, this was Napoleon, right? Like, Napoleon did this shit. It wasn't a bunch of pre-existing, like, oh, it was pretty much gonna happen no matter what, you know, and then Marx is up there. No, he wasn't even the first socialist. You're just naming important people. No, read theory. Bismarck is a good candidate, more so than Marx. I think you could make a better argument for Lenin than you could. So who's the least great man in Russia? Stalin. Motherfucker literally just followed the wave. I think you could make a better argument for Lenin than Mao. Because I feel like Mao basically just capitalized on a pre-existing powder keg of sort of like peasant sentiment. Like, he was a good guerrilla revolutionary leader, but intellectually and ideologically, he was basically just like the guy who took up that claim, though he was very good at it. I feel like Lenin had to work more uphill to build the, this conversation is also pretty subjective. Yeah, no shit. All conversations are subjective. It came free with your communicating. Lenin was Russia's Mamdani. That's fucking facts. Wasn't Stalin the one that put the industrial leap into play? He's awful, but he propelled the USSR from a backward swamp. You're still not understanding the point, dog. It's not about whether they did lots of stuff. It's about whether or not they took an existing arc of history and shifted it in a different direction. Do you think the USSR wouldn't have industrialized if Stalin hadn't been leader? Like, if another leader had taken charge, they would have been like, no, we think that Russia should stay an agrarian backwater through the 1950s. Like, yeah, no, we don't actually need tanks to win the Second World War. We're going to have like people like Prussian horseback infantry charging into German tanks. Like, no, anyone would have industrialized is the point. Okay, you people are, this conversation is degraded enormously. Last one then, FDR. FDR, absolutely not FDR. Absolutely not FDR. Read about the Long March. Mao was absolutely built different. Also, Richard Hannay had a great take on this. Why would you degrade your own point by linking a Richard Hannay tweet? Why would you could have just said read up on the Long March. Sure, I could read up more in the Long March. Why would you? Here's this weird fish-like liberal wrong Richard. Am I thinking of a different Richard? Oh, I am. Why'd you just link this? This person follows me. I don't trust them at all. I think Malcolm X would be a good idea. No, you don't get. Listen, okay. The point is, if you could replace the guy with another guy placed in the similar circumstances, would they have probably done more or less the same thing? You put someone in charge of Russia after Lenin, they probably would have done a lot of Stalin-like shit. Maybe they wouldn't have killed as many people, but I wouldn't say he wrenched the course of history. Hitler, likewise. Napoleon, built different. I think most people in Napoleon's position in life would not have done what Napoleon did, and nobody else would have, like, next to him either. It was just him who did it. TBH Vaush, Stalin did twist history to his will, but in a bad way. He reoriented the Soviet Union, killed all the old Bolsheviks. The other Bolsheviks wouldn't do this. Lenin also killed the Bolsheviks. The first thing Lenin did when taking power, before Lenin even took power, he was killing the anarchists he worked with. The Russian leader on the eve of attaining power disappears all of his opponents. This is like the main thing they do. Yes, Genghis Khan would qualify. I don't really mind you guys not engaging with the subject, like the great man theory stuff, but it does make me worry that none of you have any idea what historical materialism is. The idea of like the pre-existing tension, the dialectical conflict, the material forces that attempt to resolve themselves and sort of like in a you know, back and forth fashion. You sort of see an expression of these different alterations to the idea and the class relationship that eventually reach synthesis and usually like bore a new dynamic. Like, how about Lincoln? No! A bit cringe to say they have to be similar to the innocence of Disco Elysium. Ha! It's okay. We like our Disco Elysium references here, folks. What about Castro and Guevara? No! Anti-Batista sentiment was already really, really high in Cuba. They just followed the existing material trend. The material forces at play in Cuba already demanded the existence of a revolutionary upstart to unseat Batista and lead like an insurgency. They didn't create that. What Castro would need to be a great man in that context was for Batista to have been a good leader, a good, well-loved, competent leader that people didn't broadly dislike. And then through sheer force of will, Castro was like, nah, I actually want to be the guy. And he leads a popular uprising against him himself, creating all of the negative sentiment against Batista rather than merely taking advantage of what had already existed. A guy who takes the existing circumstances and says, no, these aren't favorable to me, and wrenches them in a different direction. That's what I'm talking about. Oh my God. Are the people in YouTube chat watching this and are you guys also just listing like every single historical figure you know, or are you sympathizing with why I have the hardest job in the world? Now they're talking about Genghis Khan and Hitler. Ah. These people don't know anything about history. I don't care if they don't know anything about history. What I care about is that they don't understand historical materialism. It's very, very, very important to understand that, like, the vast majority of the stuff that we talk about, that we engage in, that we do, are being shaped by material forces. You ain't special. I'm not special, okay? You think I developed this, like, this theory of politics or whatever, whole cloth? Everyone stands on the shoulders of giants, okay? Very, very few people don't. World War II would have definitely not happened the same way without Hitler. No. Jesus Christ. You really think that? You really think that in Weimar Germany, in a extremely poverty-stricken, disgruntled, anti-Semitic population full of educated, aristocratic, adjacent people who hated the Weimar government, felt like they were screwed over, and were desperately looking for any minority to blame. By the way, Hitler didn't invent blaming Jews for the Treaty of Versailles. That he didn't invent that. He didn't invent anything. Trust me. Hitler didn't have a single original thought in his entire life. Okay? He took existing biases and he played them up. It's like Trump. Trump didn't invent anti-immigrant sentiment. If you don't think Trump invented anti-immigrant sentiment, why would you assume, like, okay, like, use a parallel. Do you think that if Trump was never born, Republicans would not themselves have eventually settled on like a populist, ultra right-wing, xenophobic, anti-immigrant Like, do you think Trump created this? Trump might have been the guy they rallied around, but say like Ted Cruz lost to Hillary in 2016. Do you think Republicans wouldn't have gone with this in 2020? You don't think they would have wised up and eventually just gone, oh, we could actually win elections as long as we like get more racist, more out there with it, more openly corrupt. The trajectory was already, but who would be? It doesn't matter. Maybe Ted Cruz would have been that guy. Maybe they would have shifted rhetoric. It literally doesn't matter. None of these people believe anything. The trajectory already existed, okay? That's the historical trajectory for World War II and everything that happened in it, or at least a lot of what happened in it, already was in place. All of the pre-existing inertia was moving in this direction, okay? That's why we talk about Napoleon, because this, what's on screen right now, this was not inertially predictable. Nobody during the French Revolution would have gone like, yeah, do you think like one guy is basically going to conquer the whole world in like no time at all? And then get fucked up in Russia? Do you think that like in no time at all, like just one guy? Like there was no inertia towards that. Nobody predicted it. There wasn't any historical well, not much historical momentum towards it. That's the point. Europe had issues at the time.